Hey folks, I have an important announcement at the end of the video, so please be sure to stick around for that. Super Castlevania IV is an action platformer launched for the Super Nintendo in 1991. In my case, I'm playing this through the Super Nintendo Classic Mini, seeing as how I don't own an original SNES. The game was launched early into the Super Nintendo's life cycle and is still considered to this day as one of the best entries into the Castlevania series and one of the best 16-bit games ever made. I think part of that has to do with the visual and audio shock of going from this to this. I mean, to say that Castlevania IV was a massive leap in terms of graphics and audio from the first game is an understatement. And sure, Castlevania III looked and sounded better than Castlevania 1, but for some reason, it seems like that game flew under the radar for a lot of people. The game is also a sort of remake or reimagining of the first Castlevania game. But for whatever reason, when bringing this game to the West, Konami added a 4 to its title and changed the intro storyline to make it look like a sequel instead of a reboot. I'm guessing they thought a sequel would sell better than a remake, but who knows? Of course, this wasn't the only thing that was changed in the West, as our version was massively censored, with religious iconography being removed, pools of blood being turned into sewage, and the removal of this hilarious typo. But I'm probably getting ahead of myself. You play as Simon Belmont on his family quest to hunt down Dracula, who has once again risen from the grave. Everything about this game feels different from past Castlevania entries. Yes, the basic controls, weapons and enemies are still there, but now they are handled way differently. In previous Castlevania games, you couldn't control your jumps while in midair, meaning you always had to think before you leap. But now, Simon is incredibly versatile and agile. You can adjust his jumps while in the air, you can whip in all directions, you can even jump while whipping diagonally. And as if that weren't impressive enough, you can even shake your whip and use that as a shield. This comes as a huge contrast from the original Castlevania, where you could only whip forward, which often left you vulnerable to enemy attacks. Of course, this was done on purpose, as the objective was to get you to use your sub-weapons. The dagger was weak, but it could be thrown across the screen. The axe was more powerful, but it had to be thrown in an arc. The holy water was used to attack enemies below you, that sort of thing. But in Castlevania IV, you'll rarely, if ever, need them. Your whip is so powerful, you can just whip diagonally in most cases. Not to mention, you have a way longer reach this time around. And this is where Castlevania IV becomes divisive. A lot of people don't really like how much the gameplay was changed here, while others welcome the added control. I will say I prefer the classic control scheme, but I do like both options. In fact, this is probably why Castlevania Bloodlines for the Sega Genesis gave you 2 characters to choose from. John Morris, whose whip controls are a lot closer to the first game, and Eric Lacard, who controls pretty similarly to Simon Belmont in Castlevania IV. But then again, Castlevania Bloodlines feels pretty different from past entries as well. But that's mostly because by then, many of Konami's team members had left to form Treasure. Hell, Castlevania IV was cited as one of the reasons why the developers left Konami. No joke. Like I mentioned before, the game was a huge graphical leap from its predecessors, and to this day, it's still an attractive game, even though it's not really pushing the system. You'll encounter plenty of rotation effects, for example, though sometimes these come at a cost. For example, you'll often travel through colorful and detailed backgrounds. But then, whenever a Mode 7 effect appears, the backgrounds become noticeably simpler with fewer colors. And there are other times when the backgrounds seem simpler for almost no reason. It's like they didn't have the time to properly work on them. Like here, where the background is a single layer with little in the way of detail and no parallax scrolling, which is quite a far cry from the highly detailed and animated backgrounds from the first game screen. Still, I can't deny that for an early Super Nintendo game, there are a ton of graphical effects being used here that were either not possible or very hard to pull off on a Sega Mega Drive or TurboGrafx-16. Stuff like rotation, scaling, and plenty of transparency effects. By the way, did you know that in the US version, these two ghosts are called Paula Abdul and Fred Esquire? God damn it, Konami. Then of course there's the music, which is amazing. But then again, this is Castlevania, and every Castlevania game has amazing music. But what sets Castlevania IV's music apart is the fact that it ranges from heroic and upbeat to dark and brooding, immersive, and smooth jazz. I'm not alone here, this is smooth jazz, right? Overall, Castlevania IV is still an amazing game. It's a big departure from the previous games as far as gameplay goes, but it still has Konami's quality level design, great visuals, and an amazing soundtrack. And most of all, it still feels like Castlevania. Of course, by now, we all know that a complete copy of this game will cost you at least $100. But thankfully, the Super Nintendo Classic Mini has given us a new method of legally owning a physical copy of this game. And thankfully, Castlevania IV is still a great game and very much worth playing. By the way guys, have you heard of Bitmap Bureau? Well, you should, because they're running a Kickstarter to create St1ka's, a new Sega Genesis or Mega Drive game set to release in 2018. The game seems very similar to Super Smash TV, except it'll feature randomized rooms and levels, and it looks awesome! They've already reached their base goal in just 2 days, and are now doing stretch goals like 2-player co-op and even a Dreamcast port. The project lead, Mike Tucker, was a guest on last Tuesday's Sega Genesis stream, and he also agreed to an interview where he'll answer my questions and yours. And this is where you come in. Do you have any questions about St1ka's? It could be anything ranging from why they started this project to what sort of graphical tricks they're using to push the console, or how they're getting around the Mega Drive limitations. Just leave your questions to the team on the comment section and we'll have the interview ready as soon as possible. Hey everyone, thank you for watching St1ka's Retro Corner. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe and share this video. All that fun social media stuff. And be sure to hit that notification bell icon to know when a new video is out. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. Bye!